Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From pauper leagues to top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 140 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Crohn's Disease, and I'm joined by our co-host, Brad.
Hello, Crohn's. How are you?
Doing very well. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to hear you're doing better. You look good. Look like you've not had a haircut in a little while.
Yeah, I haven't been allowed to leave in a little while, but that'll be fixed very soon.
Excellent.
Yeah. Before we got too far into this episode, I just want to remind everyone that Common Knowledge and all of the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by puremtgo.com. If you would like to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Common Knowledge YouTube channel and check out our Patreon. And with that out of the way, let's get on with the podcast for the week.
Woohoo! So you were saying, you're doing better?
Yeah, man. Feeling much better. Obviously, given how things went, still not at 100%, I guess, but
you're right.
Trending towards that direction, can do more normal stuff now. Have to watch my diet pretty heavily now. But, yeah, doing...
And is that, I know you mentioned that during kind of the pre-show about watching your diet. Is that a permanent lifestyle choice? I mean, not choice, but permanent lifestyle change?
Yeah. Right now, it's really severe while my internal organs heal from the surgery. And then I'll slowly be able to scale it back, but it'll have to be changed a fair bit from what it was forever. But,
oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you losing anything that you are desperately going to miss?
Yeah, I'm a really big spice guy. I love really hot foods. Like if there's a really hot food, I like to eat it just to say I did, I guess.
Right.
It's like I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's probably not good.
Yeah, no, it's actively harmful. And, I always knew it was actively harmful. It's just especially so for me now. But, yeah, man, how have you been? We haven't talked face-to-face in almost a month now, so...
Yeah, it's been a while since they banned the squirrels. It's been a surprisingly busy month for me anyway, personally, professionally, whatever you want to call it. I know we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but work's been sort of a nightmare, but that's not totally unexpected as we wind down towards the end of the year, try to get everything wrapped up and finished on time. So it's not a huge surprise, but it's nevertheless, it's still frustrating. So I've been dealing with that a lot. And we're in October, so it's Halloween season. Trying to load up on as many Halloween movies and ghost hunting shows and documentaries and all this weird stuff that I can find. I found a couple cool paranormal podcasts that I've been binging while I'm in my truck driving around for work out in the field. It's actually two different podcasts, but it's the same host. They're just two different styles of podcasts, but they're both paranormal, like true listener stories, true accounts, stuff like that. Like he read the story behind The Conjuring and behind The Exorcist and all that kinds of stuff. So that's been a lot of fun. I learned a lot of stuff that I hadn't known before, heard a lot of cool stories. This is just really my month, my time of the year that I absorb all that crazy, weird, wacky, spooky stuff.
Yeah, man, I don't know what it is. I've also always been the kind of person, I just like to be scared, I guess. Here. And so, I'm really excited for October because my daughter's a little bit older now. So, we can get into more, the spooky bits of Halloween together, sit on the couch, watch a good movie. And it's really funny because she's young enough to where she absorbs horror in a much different way than I do. So, for example, we're watching a pretty famous horror franchise with the clown antagonist, right? And, we're watching it, and there's, this moment where, I get, sort of, scared or, heart races a little bit. And she's like, that's a mean clown, huh? And it's
yeah, he sure is.
But... All right. Glad that you've been able to listen to some podcasts, and I don't know about you. I'm pretty excited to get back to talking about some pauper.
I am too. Sadly, with being so busy, I haven't played a whole lot lately in the last few weeks or whatever, but I hadn't taken my eye off of it really for any amount of time. I just haven't actually been playing a whole lot. But yeah, I'm excited to start talking about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we dive into Pauper, we have one more announcement to make. So, as our listeners know, we actually put out kind of like an open contest for our new logo. Our viewers could submit a logo, and if they were the one that won, there were a few different prizes that they would win, as well as that would be our logo. After reviewing all the submissions and stuff, we did want to announce the winner. If you want to take that away.
Yeah, the one that we decided on as a crew, as a show, as friends, it was submitted to us by Twitter user @BoyMakesNoise. It's a really sweet design. It's well, congratulations, I guess. Boy Makes Noise. We'll put this out on Twitter when this episode goes up, so you'll probably hear this at about the same time you're finding out that you won, and we'll get all your details. We'll send you out a sweet playmat and all that groovy stuff. I appreciate you supporting the show, getting your ideas out there, and we look forward to seeing your logo everywhere that we're plastered.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Boy Makes Noise. Really excited, really happy with the
yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure. I'm not a big like graphic design person, so I'm not sure if the image they originally sent us is high enough quality or pixels or whatever to get a really good playmat image out of, so we'll make sure we get that stuff from them as well.
But after that quick announcement, I guess we can go ahead and delve back deep into what we've been doing in the Magic world since last time we spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. I know with you being sort of homebound, you've had a little more time to get the games in than I have. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so in Pauper, I've been playing a lot of Blue-White Evoke. I actually got to play a challenge with it. Did not do well in the challenge, and pretty frustrated. Felt like it was mostly my own poor play, and also pretty motivated to get to understand the deck and the metagame how I wanted to. So played a few leagues with it, got progressively better every time, understood more of the complex lines. The deck's creator at Snapbolt Games kind of talked to me actually in his stream chat about the things that are important to, learn about, like just more of intuition, like when it's time to draw cards, when it's time to start closing the game, like what removal spells are important on what creatures. And after hearing him expand on it a little bit more, felt pretty good with the deck. And I've also been playing just a few of the different meta decks. So Affinity, Cleansing Wildfire builds, Fairies, stuff like that to varying degrees of success. And then when I'm not playing Pauper, I've been playing a lot of Modern as well.
Ooh, what are you playing in Modern?
Yeah, so I started off playing Blue-White Control with Chalice of the Void.
Mm-hmm.
I think that deck is a lot of fun. I've always been a big Blue-White Control guy, and Chalice of the Void is a card that's also like right up my alley. I think that deck is really good. Then after that, I moved on to Jeskai Phoenix with a friend. We played some of that. Thought that deck was really powerful. A lot of fun. Did pretty well with it. And then recently I've been playing Is It Murktide? And I think here soon I'm actually about to switch over to, I played a little bit of it already, but play a little bit more of the Team of Rhinos deck.
Okay. Is that the Modern, Cascade version?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Modern is super wide open, much like Pauper. And all of the top decks have game against each other, much like Pauper. And all of the archetypes are represented in multiple decks, much like Pauper. So there's a lot of similarities between the formats. It's just Modern's, a little bit of a higher power level.
Right.
And some of the things that matter in a match of Modern don't necessarily come up in Pauper.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice having two formats that are super diverse be the two formats that you play.
Yep.
Especially when there's not a lot of cross-referencing between each other.
Yeah, there's really not, too. Honestly, I don't know if I've played more than a half dozen games of Modern in my life, but I listen to a couple Modern podcasts, and obviously I've looked at deck lists and read articles and stuff like that. I still absorb the content. There's a few different packages of that we use, some spell suites, some spell packages that we use, creature packages that sort of cross over a little bit, but outside of that, yeah, they're fairly different from each other. I mean, other than the obvious,
Yeah, absolutely. What about you? Have you been, I know that you haven't been able to play much, but have you been getting any Pauper in?
Yeah, I have a little bit. Before, it was more like, okay, I want to sit down and I want to play a league, or I want to sit down and make this brew and play 15 matches with it or whatever. I sort of had a goal in mind every time I signed on to MTGO or what have you. But the past few weeks, it's pretty much just been MTGO is my 20-minute break here. to decompress from everything else, or, oh, I have an hour on a Saturday evening before things go haywire again, so let me just sort of zone out and play some Magic or whatever. So I haven't been taking it too competitively the last few weeks, but yeah, I've been on a little bit. I played some Burn, some Heroic, just some of my staple decks, nothing too crazy, too involved, anything like that. Just good old Magic. I'm glad to see it's been a while since Heroic, at least in my hands, stood a chance. It's doing well again, though, so that's always good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the last league dump, didn't we talk about there are like 3 different shades of a mono white deck running around?
Yeah. From last week's 5-0 list, there was 3 different mono white decks, and it was pretty sweet. One was Heroic, one was a white weenie build, and then the other I kind of forgot. But yeah, we'll probably get to that when we talk about it here in a few minutes.
Usually all the different flavors of mono white is how you know whether or not a pauper format is healthy.
That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah. Brad's rule is if mono white isn't the best deck, ban everything until mono white is the best deck.
Yeah. You're pretty much right. That's it. I can add nothing to that because you are correct.
In all seriousness, if you want to just go ahead and jump to the main topic, pretty much hit it already. We just, haven't talked in a while, so we wanted to look through recent pauper tournaments, talk about the most recent PTQ, send out some shout outs, and look at some decks.
Yeah, pretty much just kind of look at the landscape again, see how things have changed since the squirrel banning. So to our listeners, I'm sure this is not going to be anything new. It's just sort of us catching up the show, all that good stuff. So
yeah, and I believe first we wanted to start with the Pauper Super Qualifier.
Yep.
And big shout out to Simplify. Is that how you say it?
I believe so. Simplify, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Simplify. Taking down the PTQ with blue-white familiars, actually.
Yep, that's awesome.
They've been putting in a lot of work with that deck. Really like the main pioneer behind that deck, I believe.
Yep.
And just, never quit grinding with it, and, eventually the results pay off, and a big win in a really big tournament.
And if you're not familiar with that player, it's okay. If you're not super familiar with that deck, it's fine. I think the big thing to take away is that, like you said, they're a huge grinder with that deck. Almost every week, once or twice, 3 times a week, they'll post something on Twitter like, oh, I got a 4-1, or I got a 5-0, or whatever their progress is doing. They swapped out a couple cards here and there to try it. Their whole progress with playing blue-white familiars has been documented on Twitter for at least as long as I've had my Twitter account, which is about 1.5 years now, going on 2 years. So it's been really cool to see. I think the lesson that you can take away is, we often get asked like, hey, my local pauper paper meta has decks X, Y, and Z in it. What should I play? And I think this is a good example of play what you know, play what you're good at, play what you're comfortable with, and just hope for the best, honestly.
It's always really interesting to me because there's a lot of different ways to go about things, like play the best deck each and every week and stuff. But if you ever have any doubt that you won't be able to play the best deck, or you don't know what the best deck is, you should just play whatever deck you think that you have the most amount of experience with. So I really like whenever I see these deck specialists kind of put that into action and do well in something, super big, So if you played mono green every week in leagues and you were constantly 5-0 with it in leagues and you don't have a challenge result, and then you were like you're going to plan another challenge and you're like, well, I've been doing well with mono green, but blue-black fairies is the best deck. And then you play blue-black fairies with no experience, with all the decision points that deck has. It's you probably still would have done better with mono green, even if it's not the best position deck.
Was blue-white familiars the best deck in the PTQ? That's arguable, but obviously he was the best pilot. I think I hadn't looked at the whole list. We may go through some of it, but I'm willing to bet that Simplify has more experience with that particular deck than most of the pilots on that list with whatever deck they were playing. Just
before, if we wanted to do a deeper dive into the deck, that's good. But, also appearing in the top 8 of that tournament were, I believe, 4 copies of Dimir Fairies, 2 affinity builds. One is really interesting to me. They just completely and totally 4-went blue, played just straight black-red affinity. That was strong. And then there was also a copy of Tron which, like, obviously that's a lot of fairies in the top 8, but I'm pretty sure that was also just the most played deck in general, so it sort of makes sense. And for such a competitive tournament, I actually think that top 8 is fairly diverse. You know, I know, like I said, fairies was obviously really dominant there, but outside of that, like having, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 archetypes kind of represented, somewhere between 4 and 5, depending on how you view that black-red deck, is pretty good.
Even expanding that out to the top 32, we had roughly 15 different decks in the top 32, and I think that's a decent sign. Yeah, the top 8, the top 10 got kind of muddled with Dimir fairies over and over again. But yeah, I agree with what you said. I think it's a good sign. You're bound to see those types of decks end up where they ended up. If you notice, there are 7 copies of blue-black fairies in the top 32, and the lowest rank on any of them is 19. So that tells you something. That tells you how good that deck is.
Yeah, for sure. That deck is very, very powerful. And, I think the same thing about blue-red fairies, or is it Scred? I don't know exactly how many copies in the top 32 that deck had. I think it was 1 or 2. But, that's, a lot of the same shell, just swapping out some of, the more role player cards for, a slightly different flavor.
Yep. And shout out to friend of the show, Alexander Weber, for coming in 12th place with Grixis Affinity. Good job there.
Yeah, absolutely. Grixis Affinity also had a pretty good showing. I think 5 of the top 32 decks were Affinity. Coming in at, I think I actually have it right here in front of me, 15.6% of the metagame. Yep. It's nice to see that deck didn't just get absolutely killed by the ban, and it's still very much playable. And
that's actually MTG Goldfish labeling decks Affinity. So that'd be that black-red kind of Affinity deck in 7th place. That doesn't count towards that 5. So it's actually 6. But yeah, there is a little bit of everything in here. There's a little mono and green stopping, walls combo. Obviously, Familiars took it down. There's burn. Mono blue is in here. I think the only thing that's really missing is mono white heroic, which means this event was trash. It was garbage.
You're right, man, at all.
I don't even know why we're talking about it.
Yeah, no, shout out to everybody that made the top 32 of this event.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Again, Simplify for winning it. It would be fun to do a deep deck dive sometime on blue-white familiars. I'd probably have to play the deck more just so I can have a better opinion on it.
Yeah, I would have to for sure.
Once its engine gets going, it's just so powerful, has so much value that sitting on the other end, it's a very difficult deck to beat.
Yeah, it really is. That's why I like playing against it in paper better. Because if you trust your opponent, they can just look at you and be like, "Hey, I got it. Do you want to move on to the next game?" Instead of wasting, or spending 8-10 minutes, click, 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 trying to beat you. But
yeah, that's always been the Tron thing too, right?
Yeah. Yep. What else we got here? The most recent challenges are out. The 2nd and the 3rd of October, last Saturday and Sunday. I guess I hadn't looked at Sunday's results. You pointed this out to me, that Mono Blue actually took it down. That's pretty awesome, I think, for a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also talked about it. I think that deck, I'm pulling it up now, had 15 lands in it.
Yeah, so
it's just jam-packed full of tempo creatures.
Yeah, there's 3 copies of Mono Blue in the top 32. The first place deck from Drugo had 15 lands. The 8th place deck from Lalo Palo 2001 that also had 15 lands. That feels sketchy, but obviously it works. Sorry, the Mono Blue in 25th place had 18 lands.
Yeah, so looking between the differences between the 25th and first place, I think was just the spell density. I think the first place deck has a little bit more card draw and a little bit more 1-mana spells just all around. Mm-hmm. So, it's not playing Lose Focus, which is that 2-mana spell. And so, it's getting a lot of value out of these spells. More of their spells draw cards. So they're probably hitting their 2 to 3 lands and then being okay with that just because of how few lands they play.
Yeah, just coasting after that. Yeah. Because once, that first place deck, once you hit, your 3rd land drop, you can start double and triple spelling almost every turn after that. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much what it wants to do, even with the, it's got the mutagenic growth. I'm kind of surprised I only see 2 mutagenic growth. That's a little less aggressive than I would have imagined. the not the original, but the more popular deck that was floating around on Twitter for a while from Itanabe, I believe. I think he was running 3 and 4 mutagenic growths at a time, but hey, this is awesome.
Mono Blue is a very powerful deck. It holds a special place in my heart, I think, because it's kind of like the Fairies deck in its truest version before it got tainted.
Sure.
Yeah, so always happy to see that deck do well in all seriousness.
Yeah, absolutely. This was another one, if you want to talk about top 8, that had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different decks in the top 8. For a challenge, that is amazingly diverse, I think. It had Mono Blue. It had this, what is Goldfish just calls it, white, black, red, green. Oh, it's a Cycling Storm deck. So that's interesting. We had Affinity, Boros Monarch, Pestilence, some sort of Jeskai build. What is this here from Fine Spoo? Oh, it's Familiars. Yep. I thought that was neat. That was just something I just happened to notice after we were talking about the PTQ.
Yeah, absolutely. Pauper, I think right now it's in this really good place where I think there are defined like tier 1, tier 2 decks. But I think all of the top tier decks have game against each other. And so it creates this really interesting metagame where you can decide like decks that you want to beat, and anything can beat anything, but nothing can beat everything. I really like that.
Yep, so. I do too. There are definitely, Blue Black Fairies and Affinity are probably the top 2 right now, just sort of in a vacuum. But just looking at the league dumps and the challenge and the PTQ results, it does seem like anything can win on any given match, any given day, any given event.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, kind of getting away from the more premier events, going into the most recent deck dump. I know that we mentioned the mono white deck. Something that I've been really impressed with is I think it's actually made 2 straight deck dumps now, is Soul Sisters being a thing. Playing Soul Warden, Soulless Attendant, Celestial Unicorn, Priest of Ancient Lore. Just really, really low to the ground cards that all help each other do stuff, I guess.
Yeah, super synergistic deck. I think we now have a legitimate Soul Sisters deck in Pauper. I know we had one back in the day for a while, and then it sort of fell out of favor, sort of went nowhere, and now it's back thanks to D&D, I believe. Is that who gave us Priest of Ancient Lore? Yep. And the Celestial Unicorn as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like this deck. It has a surprising amount of card draw and card advantage for a mono white deck. So, it has the 4 Squadron Hawk, which is super strong as far as card advantage is concerned. And then it's playing Priest of Ancient Lore, which, 3 mana, enters the battlefield, you gain a life to draw a card. It's also playing 2 Search Party Captain, which costs 4 mana, but costs 1 less for each creature you attacked with, and whenever it ETBs, you draw a card. Yeah. So, you're looking at a lot of card advantage, specifically in this deck. And, that's not including, Battle Screech, which creates a bunch of different bodies that your opponent will probably have to pick off with their 1-for-1 removal. And
or if they have the sweeper in hand, that sort of thing. Just looking at the creature package and then counting the Battle Screeches for what they are and their flashback, this deck here has the potential to put 47 creatures into play. That's enormous, especially for a white deck, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And, the sideboard is looking great as well with Dust to Dust, 4 of them.
Yep.
That's very strong. You get to play Nihil Spellbomb because they do play the Orzhov Basilica.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. I like that. Obviously, the Basilica helps out, helps to get your little higher mana cost creatures out there, like if you have to pay full price for a Search Party Captain or the Unicorn or anything like that. But it's pretty neat tech that it also helps with the Nihil Spellbomb, lets you draw a card off of it, and then you're not having to spend, $5 a piece on Relic of Progenitus if that's a budgetary concern. Even in paper, the deck's pretty inexpensive. It's almost $40 in paper, but almost a full third of that is just the Soul's Attendant. Those are about $3 or $4 a piece.
Other decks that it's nice to see back in the deck dumps are Mardu Midrange, the one that I'm looking at, plays Crimson Fleet Commodore, Guardian of the Guild Pack, Okibug Gang, Shinobi, Glinthawk, Raven Inspector. So, just these kind of value piles that are all over the place.
Yeah, this is like Boros Monarch circa 2019 outside of the new Indestructible Artifact lands. It's a fairly throwback sort of deck. It even runs Alchemist Vial, couple spare supplies, Bonder's Ornament, that sort of thing. But everything else is pretty straightforward. You got your removal package of Galvanic Blast and Lightning Bolts, and then Prismatic Strands, Battle Screech, all that good stuff.
I don't know if there are any other decks. Those are pretty much the ones that I kind of saw looking through that I wanted to highlight, but there's just so much here.
I think that's kind of the overarching message we're trying to get across, really, is, when Squirrels was legal and the Salamander was legal, I think we had a solid, at least 6 weeks in a row where the deck dump was 16 decks, 17 decks, because there was almost zero diversity. But if you look at these leagues now, these 5.0 deck dumps since the ban, I think there's been 2 or 3 of them. Each one has had right at 30, 31 decks in it. So we've almost doubled the amount of decks in the dumps, which I think is a very healthy sign. It shows me that people are out having fun again, trying different decks, trying different cards, because each deck has to be, 15 cards different from its next closest one to end up on the list. And I hate to go back to it, but for 3 mono white decks to show up, that's a lot of diversity between mono white to have 3 different decks show up in a 30 deck dump. So it just shows me people are having fun and trying out different stuff, and I am all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like you said, the main point that we're trying to get across is how diverse Pauper is and how fun the format is when it is diverse.
When Pauper is diverse and when it is healthy, it feels extremely wide open. Even though you'll always have the boogeyman, the blue black fairies, maybe you're scared of Boros Monarch, maybe you're scared of Boggles because it's done well lately, maybe Tron's giving you problems, but outside of 4, 5, 6 decks, there's 100 you could play that are just as fun and can be just as dominant.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's pretty much all that I had. Like I said, I just wanted to catch up on the meta. I don't know if you just want to move right to Q&A.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't think there's a whole lot to go through here. Obviously, we don't want to talk about every single deck, every single card. But yeah, just shout out a few people, go through some 5.0 lists, that sort of thing.
Well, we just got one question on the Q&A this week. Did you want to go ahead and tackle that one?
Sure. It comes to us from Twitter at JimJames_MTG. And Jim James wants to know, what's your favorite basic land, and do you have different art for different decks? For example, they said they use Mark Teeden New Phyrexia Forests for their Infect deck. What say you, Christian?
Yeah, so there's one land that I remember a lot really liking. Full disclosure, I'm the person that if I'm playing a bunch of basics, I mix match the arts. That's the only reason why I don't like Snowlands, is because I'm not able to do that. I really like having a bunch of different arts. It's always fun to have your opponents kind of make fun of them as if it's not a giant compliment that you did on purpose.
Right, sort of trolling a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. The one land that sticks out in my mind, I actually just pulled it up to make sure that I remembered the edition, is 7th edition Mountain. I really like that land.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it the border? Cool. Is it the mountain art itself, or is it sort of everything?
I think it's just everything, all together. I really like the border kind of surrounding that deep brown, that rocky brown style. I really like that border. And then also the artwork just kind of draws me in. This to me is the kind of place you would want to be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you can see yourself on those peaks.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that.
What about yourself?
I'm trying to look it up now. It figures I cannot think of which set it came from. And I specifically bought the same art on MTGO. But my favorite basic land would have to be, it's a mountain from, I thought it was from Odyssey. I don't think it's from Odyssey because I just pulled it up on Scryfall and it doesn't match what's in my mind. So let me see if it's Invasion real quick. Nope, Sun Invasion either. Anyway, it's a mountain that looks like it should be called a snow-covered mountain because there's kind of snow crusting, falling down the mountainside. That's probably my favorite basic land art of all time. I know we've gotten some really cool swamps, some really creepy artwork as of late this past couple sets, but I think that mountain is my favorite of all time. I'm partial also to the Black Border Foil 7th edition Plains. I had, one specific art too, I had my paper mono white heroic deck had all the same 7th edition foil Odyssey Plains art, so that was pretty sweet. But typically, I'm like you, I have a handful of decks in my battle box that I don't really care what the art looks like. Many times I think it's kind of cool to have 2 or 3 different white border sets of a forest in there, and then 2 or 3 different mountains, a Ravnica mountain and a War of the Spark mountain, and then a full art mountain. And if I had it up to me, like if it were just my choice and I was buying everything fresh, I probably would match the arts more often than not. I don't know if I would get as specific as the example in the question, like, oh, this is an infect deck, so I want to have new Phyrexia lands. I don't know if I would go that route with it, but I would like my arts to match. But since I build so many paper decks, I'm actually running out of basic lands, so I just sort of take whatever's available. I actually had to borrow basic lands from my cube the other day to make a deck.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing too, is the mix-match basics to me take me back to when I first started playing Magic. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like a kitchen table, go to the game shop, peel through the, 1 cent card box for hours on end, just looking at all the cards. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, the store that I would go to at the time had these like grab bags of basic lands, where it's like 25 mountains, 25 forests, 25 swamps, like already like prepackaged, just right. Like random arts that you could get for like $1 or whatever. And so like I'd be like, that's exactly what I would do. Like if I built like a mono black deck with a Fetid Imp, and I really liked Fetid Imp, it's like, hey, let me get a bunch of swamps and then just have a bunch of different art swamps. And so it's just always stuck with me. Yeah,
no, I'm totally down with that. When I first got into Paper Pauper, I tried to do like all full arts. Like I think my Is It Blitz deck has all full art islands and all full art mountains, and that's pretty cool. But for some reason, I really like the look of like 1 or 2 random full art lands mixed in with your other basic lands. I don't know why. It just kind of feels good to play them. It's silly, I guess, but I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
trying to find that mountain on Scryfall, and I just cannot find it.
Yeah,
totally blanking.
Hopefully, if we find it, we can put it like right at this spot, like Christian Brad or an idiot.
Bam! Yeah, here you go. Eat it.
Yeah. So it's gonna do it for this week's episode of Common Knowledge, I think. If you wanted to get in touch with us, you can find me on Twitter at JustGuyDad. Brad, where can they find you?
I am at pauper_B on Twitter, or BradDrackV on MTGO.
Yeah, you can find both of us at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the Pauper format, MTGO, or anything else, you can email us or leave a comment down below. We're also on Twitter all the time, ignoring our jobly duties. Thanks again to our sponsor, PureMTGO.com, as well as the Constructive Criticism Network for letting us be a part of it. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
And never stop brewing.